Tempers flying in former President Trump's New York criminal trial as lawyers argue over jury instructions. This comes after Trump's defense team rested its case today without calling on the former president to testify. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards has the details.
Attorneys in former President Trump's New York criminal trial debated vigorously Tuesday afternoon after the defense rested its case. Both sides argued about instructions on the law that the judge will read to the jury next week when deliberations begin. Trump said there is no crime.
So maybe they'll try and devise one right now. The judge will help them out because the judge has been very helpful to the other side. And that should never be in our country.
The defense pushed for language that would help the jury understand what the law is and how it works. For example, Trump's attorney Todd Blanche argued that New York law recognizes that conspiracy charges require a willfully component. Falsifying business records in the first degree requires that there be intent to commit another crime. The defense said the prosecution didn't prove criminal intent, and if there was a violation, it was civil, and therefore Trump can't be convicted of a crime. But the prosecution maintained that the conspiracy itself is the crime. Other areas argued include how to define words in the federal election law and in New York law. The judge didn't rule on most of the issues, but he denied the defense's request that the jury be told there was no limit on federal candidates' contributions to their own campaigns. In other courtroom drama Tuesday, key defense witness Robert Costello completed his testimony. Costello came off as a fiery witness on Monday, but Judge Juan Merchan threatened to strike his testimony. Costello had made remarks after Merchan made several rulings that favored the prosecution. Costello testified on Monday that he previously represented Michael Cohen and that Cohen repeatedly told him Trump knew nothing about the $130,000 payment. On cross-examination, the prosecution showed the jury emails from Cohen saying he wasn't hiring Costello's firm. Judge Merchan excused the jury until next Tuesday, at which time both sides will give closing arguments. The jury will begin deliberations on Wednesday. Arlene Richards reporting from the criminal courthouse in Manhattan.
The International Criminal Court, ICC, is accused of giving equal treatment to the democratic nation of Israel and the terrorist group Hamas, drawing criticism from both the White House and members of Congress. But is more action warranted for America's most important ally in the Middle East? Joining me now to assess the ICC warrants for Israel's Prime Minister and Defense Minister is Bryan Leib, GOP congressional candidate in Florida's 25th District. Bryan Leib, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you back, Bryan. This time in a bit of a different setting. The International Criminal Court is seeking arrest warrants for Hamas leaders, but also for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli Defense Minister. Talk to us about, how this came to be.
Well, the ICC is driven by some serious hatred for the state of Israel. They've been on a warpath against Israel for a while now, and I think this is just the latest chapter in the ICC's book. And the very fact that they want to label, Israel as a genocidal country, they want to put Benjamin Netanyahu in the same ballpark as the leaders of Hamas, I think really tells you everything that you need to know about what the ICC is doing here. It's been nice, I guess, if that's the word to say, to see the President Biden and other leaders in America come out and condemn this. But I also have to think that if President Biden and the U.S. had used our full diplomatic might, then this never would have happened in the first place with the ICC. So it's par for the course with the ICC. I don't think anyone should be surprised, and honestly, I don't think it's going to affect Israel in any way, shape, or form. They've got to continue forward, Steve, in eradicating Hamas once and for all, or else the Israeli people are never going to be able to live in peace.
Bryan, to your point, also breaking today, Amal Clooney, wife of actor George Clooney, both Democrat activists, it appears as though she was advising the ICC to seek these warrants. The Clooney's, it's well known they're large donors and supporters of President Biden. So does this rise to the level where Biden should be condemning or at least calling out some of his supporters who are in the middle of this anti-Israel sentiment?
I mean, Steve, of course he should be, but we all know he's not going to, the same way that he hasn't said a single word really about the pro-Hamas protesters all throughout America that have been chanting for death to America and death to Israel for the last couple months since October 7th. So I don't think you're going to see anything from the Biden administration with this. They've made their bet. They are going all in on doing what they can to put the handcuffs on Israel. While also, continuing to send billions of dollars to the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I'm sure we're going to maybe touch on this at some point in this interview. But I mean, the very fact that the President Biden and at the UN yesterday, and also on the Senate floor, on Chuck Schumer's Senate floor, that we held a moment of silence for Abraham Raisi is just deeply shameful. It's a guy who has the blood of thousands of innocent Iranians on his hands. He most certainly was involved in one way, shape, or form with the attack on Israel. But yet, we're sending condolences to a man that's nickname is the Butcher. So up is down, down is up right now when it comes to the Biden administration. And I think a lot of people are really fed up and sick and tired in this country.
Bryan, you're running for Congress in the state of Florida. Speaker Johnson is threatening to take a vote on sanctioning the ICC. We've seen your competitor in your congressional race there, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, speaking out against the ICC decision. Would this be a worthwhile vote to see where people actually stand rather than just using words?
I think so. I did hear about this that the speaker is looking to do this. I think he should do it. Let's put people on the record with this. And yes, I am running for Congress in Florida's 25th congressional district against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and she's a career politician. She's been in Congress for over 20 years. When I was graduating high school, Steve, she was being sworn into Congress. So I think it's time for change. It's time for a new face, bold ideas, fresh perspective, and someone like me and many others like me to get into Congress and really shake things up and be a disruptor. Steve, I don't want to be a career politician. I want to get in there for a couple terms, make my mark, try and put this country back on a path to sanity. And then I want to come back into the private sector. But I will definitely support Speaker Johnson's move to have a vote on this. Let's call the yeas and nays. Let's see where people stand on this, and let's put them on the record. I think it's a great idea.
Bryan, just lastly, you touched upon the moment of silence held for the Iranian president who was killed in that helicopter crash. Iran, like China, is a totalitarian regime. What comes along with this type of governing is endless infighting. We know that. We see that with the CCP. We hear a lot about, maybe the U.S., the CIA, the Israeli Mossad being involved in downing this helicopter with the Iranian president in it. Could this have actually been an inside job? We know that the presidential election has now been triggered within Iran in 50 days to shake things up.
I mean, anything's possible. I mean, I think it's one of probably three options right now, Steve. One would be the obvious that a lot of people go to right away, and that the Israelis or the Mossad were behind this in one way, shape, or form. Secondly, to your point, someone within the IRGC or within the Khamenei inner circle was behind this because they didn't think that Raisi was really towing the line for them. And then third could be really just kind of an act of God here. This was a 40-year-old helicopter flying in very bad conditions, and it's very possible, that it was an accident. I find the entire situation honestly very interesting. Even more so, I find it interesting that the Islamic Republic of Iran and their state media have been very transparent in the media about what's happening. That's not typically what they do, Steve. I think you know that. So it's interesting that they've been so open and transparent about this. But I mean, one thing is for sure. And listen, I'm a man of faith. I'm a Jewish American, and in our faith and many other faiths, we celebrate life. But I will say that I think the world's a safer place and a better place. And Iran and the Middle East is a better place with Abraham, the Butcher, Raisi gone, and also the foreign minister, the interior minister. I mean, this is a catastrophic blow, to the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I'm going to be following this very closely, going to see if the Iranian people potentially try and create an uprising like they did in the past. Again, at the end of the day, I'm not going to be shedding any tears over the fact that one of the world's biggest terrorists and monsters is now dead. I think it's a good day for anyone that supports freedom in Iran, and also the state of Israel and the United States of America.
Bryan Leib, really appreciate your perspective and insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, Steve.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.